Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on our webinar, A Practical Guide, Building your BI Business Case for 2017. My name is Michal Wachstock, and I'm Head of Engagement here at Sisense. I'm thrilled that you've all joined us for today's session, and what great timing as we're all out trying to build our 2017 budgets and convince management of the projects we're most passionate about. In today's webinar, our presenters will walk you through why you should invest in BI to begin with, how to build an internal business case for investing in BI, and then building out your budget to drive your company to a purchasing decision. You'll then hear a Sisense partner present a unique matrix for BI decision making and where you fall on that matrix. Then he'll go over how to build the internal business case, what the intricacies are for building a budget, and how to drive your company to a purchasing decision. I'd like to introduce today's presenters. We have Ani Manian. He's Head of Product Strategy here at Sisense. Ani is passionate about bringing Sisense vision forward. His role at Sisense is to ensure Sisense's product strategy and development efforts are well-informed, thoughtfully planned, and effectively executed. Ani has deep understanding of the BI industry and has quickly become a recognized thought leader in the industry. Our second presenter is Philip Lima. He is founder and Chief Development Officer at Mashey, a partner of Sisense. The Mashey team accelerates data analytics initiatives for companies. They love data, building things, and helping people increase data literacy. You'll be hard-pressed to find someone who's gotten more BI projects successfully off the ground, with hundreds of successful implementations under their belt. A few housekeeping notes before our webinar. First of all, a recorded version of this webinar will be available, and everyone who's registered to the event will be sent the recording shortly after the event. Additionally, you'll find the presentation deck and supporting white paper available for download within the BrightTalk console. You'll also find a link to start a free 30-minute Sisense POC. At any point during the session, please feel free to click and schedule time for our team to guide you through a full POC. We'd love to hear from you throughout the session. There'll be Q&A at the end, but feel free to send questions throughout the webinar, and I'll collect them for the end of the session. I'd actually like to start with a poll. Let's see if I can get that moving. Start voting. We're going to start with a quick poll to see how engaged you guys are in BI right now. If you could take a second and just answer those really quickly. What's your current business intelligence engagement level? You should see that pop up for yourself. I see some of the answers coming in. Great. Thank you so much for answering that. It looks like most people are either building a business case right now or looking to replace a current BI tool. We have a few who are looking for the correct BI tool right now. I'll leave that open for another few seconds. And for those of you who are just joining us now, a few minutes after the webinar started, I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar, Building Your Business Case, your BI Business Case for 2017, a practical guide. And with no further ado, I'll pass the mic over to Ani, who will take it from here.
Wow, so almost half of you are currently building a BI business case. So this is very timely, and I'm really pleased to have Philip here. So Philip has experience with hundreds of implementations of BI across different verticals, different industries. And here at Sisense, among the thousands of clients we have, we see a lot of this as well. So in exchange for the lunch hour that you're sacrificing for us, we are hoping to provide you with a really kick-ass return on time invested. We're going to go all the way from a rationale for why BI needs to be a centerpiece of your strategy for 2017, all the way to how you actually build a case, build a budget, a path to purchase, and profit. So let's kick it off. So BI has a very, very, very clear and irresistibly simple twofold rationale for your organization. It's proven to help you make money and save time. According to a study by Nucleus Research, organizations earn an average of almost $11 for every dollar they spend on BI. Now, this ROI is made possible because next generation technologies like Sisense are allowing organizations like yours to more easily transform their data into insights. once implemented, they enjoy a tremendous organization visibility into every area of the business. And this allows them to streamline their operations and make better decisions across the board. All of this leads to significantly higher profits. So the bottom line is that companies that use analytics to learn more about their customers, their products, their costs, will be in a much better position to cost effectively grow their business, and often at the expense of their rivals. BI also has the ability to save time by improving organizational efficiencies and really decreasing the amount of time that's spent searching for crucial information. A report that one of the analyst firms in the industry called Aberdeen found that 93% of the required information that decision makers need is available in time and on demand in best-in-class organizations. And these are organizations that do a really good job of implementing BI and providing insights to knowledge workers who are using these insights and making decisions on a daily basis. Now, this study also revealed that the best-in-class organizations achieved a 95% on-time customer response rate. And we all know how important responsiveness is to keeping a customer relationship on the good side. So this has significant impacts on customer satisfaction and actually really boosts lifetime value from these same customers. So best-in-class organizations, and some of you who actually implemented BI might be one of them, they're deriving tremendous value from BI across the board. They have a lot more visibility into their business. They get faster answers to questions that you might, ask yourself every day, or one of your colleagues might ask. How much money did the company earn in actual dollars yesterday? Which communication channel do your customers prefer to use the most? Which marketing campaign generates the most number of leads or is the most effective? Now, these and other questions are commonly asked in business meetings on a daily basis, and having answers at your fingertips makes a much better decision making. So best-in-class companies are also using BI to identify opportunities to drive new revenue, deliver much better customer satisfaction, and retain their business much better. So with this said, I'm gonna pass this on to Philip, who's going to talk about how to practically build a business case and build a budget for your BI strategy for 2017.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending. So I'm Philip Lima, and I'm the founder of Mashey. As Ani and Michael already introduced, we've got a ton of experience in implementing BI projects. So we've built business cases and helped companies try to understand how to get started with BI a number of times. So we were invited by Sisense to join this webinar to get down into the actual details of what it takes to get started with a BI initiative. As far as Mashey goes, we're founded by a team of experts in data management and professional services. We founded Mashey about a year ago, but the experience of the team goes back about 30 years, even back to mid-'80s at the company called EMC, building their professional services for that organization on a global scale. So we've got a bit of experience in professional services as well, but specifically towards the analytics and BI focus. And what we're offering is a turnkey approach to advancing data analytics initiatives. And I'll discuss a bit more about that, what it means practically in a few minutes. But really, you could think of it like us servicing the full spectrum of a data analytics journey, including BI, data science, data architecture, and data engineering. So perhaps the most relevant for this discussion is that we're the premier Sisense implementation partner in the US. So again, thanks for Sisense for inviting us to this. Specifically, what we wanted to cover in this section is how to build an internal business case for investing in BI. And as Ani introduced, we'll discuss these points. The second point is, what are the intricacies of building a BI budget? And how do you drive your company to actually make a decision to take action? So to tackle these points, we'll discuss how to examine the current company environment and its objectives as it relates to the use of BI, not the full company objectives, obviously. And then we'll discuss building a high-level plan for this initiative for the organization. And then the real juicy part, which is building out the cost scenarios, and finally assembling a business case that drives a decision. So let's jump right in. First, let's examine how to understand your current company's objectives. So each person listening here is doing so for a reason, and that poll that Michal launched is an indication of the reason for attending. So the most important thing to think of first in this discussion is, what is the company trying to accomplish, and what's its plan to make use of BI? Specifically, what we mean is, who's going to be the audience for this output, and what is the scope? So let's talk about the relationship between audience and scope in this context. What we like to do at Mashey is plot out a matrix along with two axes here, where we look at the audience across the horizontal and the scope along the vertical axis. And we like to consider these four things as we move around this matrix. So what are the motivations for investing in BI or thinking about BI? What are the business benefits, some of those ones that Ani mentioned earlier? What's the complexity that you could expect in terms of data or end user requirements? And what sort of resistance or challenges might be faced in this objective? So I'd like to take a couple minutes just to kind of give examples of companies that fall on different parts of this matrix, and I would encourage the people who are listening to think about where they would fall on this matrix. So I'll start up in the top left corner here. So in this scenario, we're looking at companies who are looking to implement internal analytics, but across the entire company. A great example of this is one customer we're working with that's implementing Sisense across all departments, including their marketing department, inventory management, sales, and they're building an executive dashboard as well to keep track of those key company metrics. That customer is actually an online retailer for automotive performance parts, ECS tuning. So really for them, what they were looking at is, how can they create a more data-driven culture from the top down? So we're actually working directly with the CFO to implement Sisense throughout all corners of the organization. Because really what he's trying to do is create a data-driven management style. He wants to provide more agility in making decisions, more access to data, that's quicker access to data, and all those, a number of other objectives too. But those are the main things that he's chasing. The complexity that we face in this scenario is fairly high in terms of data complexity, because of the fact that you've got constituents from multiple divisions in the company, multiple departments. So you've got maybe Salesforce data, Google Analytics data, maybe you've got ERP data, because you want to combine all these datas into one place and present them to create a complete picture of the company. So the data can be pretty complex, but in reality, the analytics that you're creating outside as an output of that data is fairly simple. It's the key metrics that drive the business, nothing too complicated. Another example is, let's consider a smaller scope. So if we move down that axis to an internal BI initiative on a departmental level, a good example of this is another Sisense customer we're working with, which is the Wirecutter. It's an online blog for product reviews. If you haven't used it, I encourage you to check it out. I use it a lot. But what we're doing there is we're supporting them on a kind of small scale with just one very specific part of the organization, and that's analyzing the performance of the pages on their website. Now, eventually, Sisense will be provisioned throughout the entire company, but for now, that's what they're presenting. It's just the analytics of performance on pages. Now here, the business benefit is that they're improving operational efficiency. Customers that are in this quadrant typically will come to us with something like a pivot table, which is hundreds of columns wide, and this Excel file is used to drive the business. So that they're kind of in a situation where the data is probably pretty simple, but the analytics that they're trying to produce is a bit more complex, and they really need some guidance in how to simplify that so that you can create a high-level overview of that, but also provision the different levels of complex requirements of the end users. So we've talked about kind of internal use cases, and I won't go into the same level of detail on external use cases, but I'll briefly mention a couple other Sisense customers. And one example is one that's doing a company-wide external-facing analytics product, and that's People Admin. They're a talent management software company, and what they're doing is they're using Sisense as the analytics layer for one of their existing or I guess the core of their business, which is talent management software. So they're embedding Sisense into that existing software to provide analytics for their customers. This is core to their business, and it's a complex set of data because that's, after all, why they exist, is because of solving a complex business case. But at the end of the day, the requirements that they have on analytics are fairly simple, typically, I would say. On a smaller scale of that, we have another customer as an example who's Retech. It's a LexisNexis company. What they're using Sisense for is for one specific part of their company. They're looking at medical device problem reporting. And again, they're using Sisense to embed into their existing product to provide more analytics on that one particular part of their business. So we won't go into a ton of detail on analyzing the different factors here across each of these quadrants, but we encourage you to do a thorough analysis of these different scenarios, not only to understand where you are now, but also to create some context for your initiative. So that brings me to my next point. It's important to consider where you are now as an audience member may not be where you want to finish or where you want to go in the future. So going back to People Admin as the example, they were in the top right corner. Now they're using Sisense internally for corporate level BI, which is something very different from where they started. So it's important to understand you can move around this matrix, and if you've got a great platform to work with, definitely that platform should support you in whatever direction the business requirements take you. So we spend a bit of time now understanding how we can start to dissect a company environment as it relates to their BI initiatives. Let's take a look at the next step, which is creating a high-level plan for how to move forward. So what we like to do here is take a look at 4 key questions. So again, what are the business priorities? That's what we just discussed in the previous slide. What's the scope and who's the audience for this BI application that you're considering investing in? How quickly does it need to be done? Is this something that's needed in a couple of months? Is it needed a year ago? Or is it something that the business is planning for the future for and maybe needs towards the end of 2017 or something like that? What resources do we have available? Is definitely a very key component here. You could have a team of internal developers, business analysts, data analysts, product owners, and depending on what the initiative is, you may need all or some of those to get the job done. So what sort of resources are available to get done what you're aiming to do? And finally, is there a budget that exists already, or does one need to be built based on business objectives and ROI? So speaking of ROI, obviously you can't build an ROI calculation without a cost component. So that brings us to the next fun part, which is how much will it cost? So when it comes to costs, there are typically 3 components that should be considered here. The first is the software. So obviously you need to buy the software, but what that gets you is a license key delivered to your email address, or in the old days, you might actually get a CD or a disc. But these days, you really just get a privilege to use software is really what you're buying there. So the second component there is the hardware. You need to actually install that software somewhere, the software that you purchased. And the third component is that you need to actually do something with it. So you need some support for initial implementation, continuous development, and improvement of that application. So I'd like to contrast a couple of ways to tackle this. Some vendors in the space, like Domo as an example, offers this whole package as one lump sum price, which is great for some organizations since it's easy to to get going. Everything's kind of already packaged and ready to go. On the flip side is that vendors like this typically require you to use their professional services teams, and there might be limited ability to develop on your own, which is something that I would consider as a fairly significant detractor to that solution. But even if your resources internally could do it, you couldn't really take ownership of it either. So some things to consider in that scenario. There's another type of vendors that I'll contrast with those ones that choose to keep these separate, and Sisense is one of these. So this gives the flexibility to install it where you want, to implement it and maintain it how you want, with people you want. The flip side of this is that you may not have the resources to manage a server, you may not have the time or people to really make this initiative take off, and plus the fact that probably the people that you would use still need to maintain their current responsibilities. So servicing a BI tool and its end user request might not be a viable option. So is there a way to get the best from both of these approaches? Well, now I'll do a Mashey plug for, since we are here presenting as Mashey. What we wanted to do is we said, okay, let's take the positives from both of these scenarios and put them together. So I won't go into, this is not a marketing campaign for Mashey. I just wanted to give a context of what we provide and specifically how it relates to Sisense for those of you considering Sisense. And then we'll get back to building out the business case and the cost and so forth. So precisely what we're doing is we're taking the best from both of those scenarios that I mentioned earlier. So what we're doing is we're supporting companies by offering them a fully managed service. For the entire data analytics spectrum. So this is a discussion about BI. So BI at the centerpiece there, we'll focus on that. So what we're doing there is we're helping your company consume BI and set up a business case and plan or roadmap for implementing BI and getting benefit out of it. To the left of that is data engineering, since even tools like Sisense, which provide a full stack solution, which means you've got a data layer, and a presentation layer, and a security layer. They work really well, but there are certain cases where the requirements of the business don't fit what BI products like Sisense are trying to do. So that's when data engineering comes into play, where you've got a lot of work to do in terms of gathering data, cleaning data, warehousing data, and provisioning that to business applications or other business consumers. To the right of business intelligence, we have predictive analytics solutions for advancing the use of data to be proactive in your business. And finally, we offer that as a fully managed and hosted solution. So really, we offer our team of experts to be an extension of your team to get this done in a seamless and easy way. So our offer allows an organization to start perhaps with a fully managed service, and then take ownership of certain components of those whenever they wish. And obviously we'd support with the handoff with that. Or we could take ownership of an existing environment where you feel like maybe it's not the right thing for the company to do anymore. Either way, but as I mentioned, this is the best of both worlds that we're offering. So bringing it into the Sisense context, let's say, for example, Sisense, you purchase a license from Sisense. Now you've got that component. Then Mashey can support you with getting the hardware to get it going and the services and support to get it going. Again, Sisense invited us to join this conversation because we're helping their customers, and this is kind of how we're supporting the customers. So taking you from where you are now to where you want to be. Maybe it's just purely a business intelligence objective, but again, supporting you with where you want to be in the future. So from here, let's take a look at these cost components a bit more. So I wanted to dive into these and show a little bit more of scenarios where kind of A versus B scenarios on these cost components. So on the first one, which is the software license, there are basically two approaches. One is a perpetual license, which still comes with some sort of recurring maintenance fee, typically around 20%. And the benefits of this is that you avoid some recurring costs but it requires that you put a large upfront cash to get it going. The thing that we would caution here is to consider that the vendor may be less engaged with you since they've received a ton of cash up front already. The other model is a yearly subscription or a yearly kind of straightforward pricing, which is what Sisense does. What this does is it avoids an upfront cost and it ensures the vendor continues to be dialed in to the customer's success on a continuous basis. So whatever application you're considering, consider these both of these points. The second component is the hardware. So pricing hardware for a BI solution can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. So we encourage to consider just two things. Look at the amount of data you have and look at the number of users you have. This should be good enough to get an estimate of what the hardware should cost. So consider the number of rows of your largest table and the number of expected concurrent users. Now the image here is kind of an arbitrary example, but it depends on the vendor, it depends on the vendor really what size that machine should be for small, medium, and large, depending on those two variables. But obviously, the vendor should help you with speccing that out. Or if you work with Mashey, then obviously we could help you with that as well. The third component is the implementation and support component. So internally, if you've got a full data analytics team, that's great. If you've got people who've got experience with doing this, it's great. Then it might be a great choice for you to do it as a fully internally developed solution. The other way to do it is to work with a partner which doesn't completely release the internal team from supporting on some level, but it does help you implement faster with lower risk, but obviously it comes at a direct cost.
Philip, can I jump in for a second? There's a question that came in that I think is relevant that we answer now, if you don't mind. The question is, how much cost should we expect for implementation and support for internal versus external development?
Yeah, it's an important question to ask. The thing that we would consider, let's take it kind of as a simple scenario, maybe a baseline scenario. Let's say you're doing internal development for one department, or maybe you're doing company-wide development, but you're a small company. I would consider as a starting point the cost of one FTE for probably 2 to 3 months as kind of a baseline, and go from there. Of course, it depends where you are on your matrix, as we discussed earlier. So that's something to consider, but this should be a pretty good starting point. The thing I would consider in that scenario, though, is, again, you run the risk of diverting their attention away from other projects, and you might result in, obviously not guaranteed, but you might result in perhaps a suboptimal development or deployment of that, especially if they haven't done a BI project before.
Great.
As far as external partners go, yeah, no problem. As far as external partners go, obviously, let's be honest, working with consultants is more expensive than working with employees, but the upside is that you'll get it done faster and you'll have better results. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, sure. That's great. Thanks so much.
Yep. So now that we've talked about the costing components, let's actually build a cost scenario. We don't have time because of the fact that it's a 40-minute webinar to really go into the details of what this would take. But consider these components, and we would encourage you to map it out over a few years. The key point here really is, when you're building your cost scenarios, help the decision maker make a decision. So we need to work on building out scenarios that help that individual say yes or no. Maybe they don't say yes to either one of those scenarios, which is fine, but maybe they say, we'll take a hybrid of these two, or we'll tweak A or B. But really what you've done is you've enabled them to make a decision as opposed to coming to them with nothing. So the point here really is to create options. And again, the numbers here are kind of intentionally left out because it depends really on your business objectives and the size of the project you're trying to implement, and obviously the software you choose. But again, if you need support with this, Sisense is here to help, and she's here to help. There's one thing that we do recommend, though, before we get to how to drive the decision to completion. We would highly recommend building out a proof of concept. So what we mean here is, if you're considering a few softwares, go download and test that software that you're considering to see how it works on your specific objectives. So some vendors will provide a full version of their software for a limited period of time, or others would offer a limited version of their software kind of indefinitely. Sisense happens to offer their full software for a trial period. But I'd really encourage building out a proof of concept and really select one small business problem from all those ones that you're trying to solve and focus on that one only. It's easy to lose focus and develop 10 different things, but we really would encourage to focus on depth and quality of that one business problem, so you really understand what the application can support, what kind of data changes you would need to be prepared for, and that sort of thing. So a great example of a proof of concept could be, I'm going to take a manual report of mine that I keep distributing to my team on a regular basis. Maybe it's a budget variance report by category. They could say, okay, we've got these categories that are up or down based on these variables over time. Cool, you've got that data. So you've got that report, you've got that data, which is probably coming from your ERP system of some sort, and maybe you have some Excel file which has your budget data in it. So take these data sources and put them into the application. Then we would consider building out the pivot table of that same report that you've been sharing with your team, because you want them to be comfortable with what they've been seeing. So that should be one of your deliverables. But of course, this version of the report would be governed, it would be automated, and it would be kind of certified version of the report, as opposed to something in Excel, which obviously could break pretty easily. But that should be definitely one of the outputs of a POC. And the other could be an overview dashboard, which has key variance metrics and other trends or analysis of that variance scenario. The reason this is of huge value is that it's free, except for the time that you actually invest in building it, but it gives you something that's tangible that you can then use when you go to present this to your team for a decision. So now we've kind of got everything assembled to start making or driving that purchasing decision. Let's talk about then just assembling it here as we wrap it up. So now we're now going to take this to a purchasing decision. We've got 4 things in our hands now. We've got an analysis of our objectives. We've got that matrix. We know where we're sitting on that matrix. Perhaps we know what direction we're going to go on that matrix. We've got a high-level plan. We've got our cost scenarios, and we've got a proof of concept to show. So now we've got everything we need to compose a business case. What we would encourage you to do is assemble that business case with those components, demo your proof of concept to the team, and then present next actions to them, and try to be as specific as possible about what those next actions are. I can't emphasize enough, building a proof of concept will really be the glue to stick this all together. So to summarize, I'll let Ani back on here in just a sec. I just wanted to summarize here on the 3 points and make sure we got the right points out. So we promised to discuss how to build an internal business case for investing in BI. So how to identify those business needs now and where they're going in the future. We examined the intricacies of building a budget, those 3 components: software, hardware, and support, and how to drive the company to a purchasing decision. Assemble your work, build a business case, develop a POC, and if needed, develop a relationship with a professional services company to help drive that incentive, and they should also help you with those points above. So with that, I'd like to thank Sisense again and the listeners, and I'll hand it back to Ani.
Thanks, Philip. That was quite wonderful. So, folks, now that you know how to build a business case and a budget, it's key to communicate the importance of acting now, since we're almost at the end of 2016, to influencers and decision makers, but most importantly, those that actually hold the budget. we've seen a shift in the kind of interest we get from organizations, and it's increasingly coming from knowledge workers that are just seeking more and more information to make better decisions. Now, the use of data to drive decision-making in order to manage and grow your business is becoming table stakes as more and more companies implement BI, and it's critical that you gain an edge over your competition. BI tools have come a long way, and creating a single source of truth for your business that gives you visibility across all areas doesn't have to be a dream that requires an army of expensive technical resources or months of development to realize. It's really imperative that you act now to create the right foundation for 2017 and beyond. And tools like Sisense can give you that edge, so you can save time and make more money. And there's a very interesting stat I found that I'd like to share. According to both IBM and MIT, organizations that are driven by analytics and data-driven decision-making, they outperform their industry peers by 2.2%. Now, it's really the question, which side of that spectrum you want to be on. Now, Philip talked a lot about building a POC, and I do think that that's the right way to approach, initiating the discussions for your first BI solution, or replacing something that you might have that you're not really getting value from with something that your organization does benefit. So we firmly believe that POCs are the right way to do this and to demonstrate that you can actually get the value before you sign a check and drop a contract. So we aren't afraid to actually put our money where our mouth is. We'd like to prove it. So in a 90-minute guided web session, we do promise to take you from nothing to a working production dashboard using your data. And we do believe that no one else in the market can deliver on that claim. So please do visit Sisense.com and schedule your test drive today. It's really important to actually see the proof in the pudding before you invest. And something like this can actually help you make your case stronger, make it seem a lot more tangible. And the Sisense team is always available to actually help you prepare that case, prepare that budget, and really estimate the true costs and the true value that you can drive. So with that, I'll actually turn it back to Michal for some questions that have come in. Thank you.
Great. Thanks to both of you for the insight and the very interesting presentation. We do actually have some questions that have come in. Before we get there, I would just like to remind everyone that in the attachments and links section in the section in the console is a link directly to the POC. So if you fill out your information there, someone will get back to you to schedule that. So it gives you easy access to do that. Okay, first question. What do I do if the company previously bought BI but couldn't get value out of it? How do I convince them to reinvest? Maybe that's for you, Ani?
Sure. This is a good one. We actually see this a lot, and there's a stat going around that 80% of enterprises have actually made a purchasing decision on BI already. So a lot of the companies that come to us, they've bought BI, but they're having trouble actually getting value from it for various reasons. And the thing that we do struggle with is that BI has very low adoption among all enterprise software. And part of this is because, historically BI has been a tool for the companies that have lots of resources and lots of time. And so, as smaller companies and mid-sized companies want to enjoy these benefits, there's this perception that, BI is not for them. It's, for the top, 5-10% of the companies. Now, if you're one of those companies that have actually invested already in BI and aren't really seeing the value, what I really recommend you do is speak to, a company like Sisense and help us really understand the schematics of your situation. What are your organizational needs? What are the departments you're trying to implement BI? Companies like Sisense can actually give you a test drive, a POC, on your data with your metrics. And the best way to compare, what you have right now with the kind of value that you could get with zero risk or zero sort of dollars spent is actually seeing a POC like that. And you should do that with, every single company that you're evaluating. and actually see which company can deliver the value before, like I said, you sign the check. Because it's really important to see this before you lock yourself into a contract, and then it's sort of your name and reputation on the line. Philip, do you have any thoughts on this topic specifically?
Philip, I think you might be on mute.
Yeah, along the lines of what Ani said. In summary, basically, if there has been some issue there in adoption or success, again, maybe you engage. Maybe the product wasn't right, or maybe the way it was implemented might not be right. But we would encourage to again start small, build a critical business case, and see that to fruition.
Right. There's a variety of reasons why this might be your reality. Either the decision makers don't have access to the insights coming out of your BI tool. Maybe the data is locked up in lots of silos and the tool is unable to access it. Maybe it's an older tool like an in-memory solution that gets bottlenecked with the quantity of data you're trying to analyze. There's many reasons why this is the case. But what's critical is that you actually start getting value out of your tool, or replace it with a tool that works for you, because in this market, a lot of investment is taking place in BI. Your competitors and your peers they have access to cutting edge information. They can really be agile in how they run their businesses. They can, make changes as they happen. And you need to enjoy the same degree of flexibility, speed, time to decision, and efficiency, because we at Sisense, we eat our own dog food. Every single department runs on Sisense, and it's instrumented with Sisense. So, on a weekly cadence, we actually look at our metrics and we change course on a very fine-grained level, and we really see the benefits that brings. We help our clients do the same, and I think it's important that each one of you is able to enjoy the same benefits.
Great. I have another question for Philip. Do you have a recommendation for the most important metric that you would put in a business case?
Yeah, I guess it's probably going to be ROI, right? So you take a look at the cost that it would take for those three components, and what does the company get back? It could be efficiency gains if it's an internal application or internal use case. Or external use case where you're maybe selling licenses to your software. Maybe you can sell licenses at a faster rate. You can sell more licenses or at a higher cost or a higher price. Then that would go into the benefits gained on the investment. But that would be the number one thing to include there.
Great. A few more questions here. Let's take this one. Can you guys help me build the business case? Maybe that one's for Ani, or I guess both of you.
Absolutely. So our sales team won, it's considered top 2 in the BI market by Gartner, which is a big industry analyst firm on sales experience. And one of the things we do in this process is actually help you understand what your needs are and see what makes sense. So if you are in a position where you feel like you need BI, you need insights, but you need help convincing, the decision team at your organization, that's something that, we do on a regular basis, and we'd be more than excited to help you with that. Philip?
Great.
Yeah, same thing here. We're happy to help you guys. We've done it a few times, and we'd be glad to help you out with it.
There are a few questions that have come in for pricing or follow-up. You can feel free to submit those questions, and we'll have someone follow up with you. We're not going to discuss pricing on this webinar, but feel free to post that request, and we'll have someone contact you immediately afterwards. So I think we're going to call it a wrap. I think this has been really educational. I appreciate all of your time, and I appreciate our speakers. Thank you so much. And have a great day. We hope to see you again soon.